Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I am your host, DPalm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. You can follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. And if you're going to talk about UDPod, I ask on all your social media, use the hashtag UDPod so I can say thank you for the shout out, thank you for the show idea, thank you for the critique. Probably not thank you for the critique. So this intro is a little different because normally I just come out here and I big up the things we do, and I'm going to do that too. But I want to say thank you for listening and downloading, and welcome to the very first MTR Network podcast week for UDPod. This is a little something I used to do at my old show, and I'm doing it here. We're going to do 5 days of content for you guys as we head into this fall season. We're talking football, we're talking professional wrestling, but the whole first 4 days are just chock full of great football knowledge with great guests. You've got some of the UDPod favorites back to help us out and cover all the things that are in college football, the NFL, maybe a little light gambling talk here and there, who knows. And we close out with, again, a preview of the entire SummerSlam weekend for WWE and NXT. Make sure you listen every day because we're going to be dropping the details on our UDPod fantasy teams this year. We're going to try to get a fantasy football league going. If there's enough response and interest, please use the hashtag, tweet at me, tweet at the show. Let me know if you're interested in doing the fantasy football league, and I'll make sure you get that lined up. It'll be announced later this week. Again, like I said, brought to you by MTR Network. Couldn't be happier, couldn't be more thankful for all the things they let me do. I always say that Chris just lets me do whatever I want, and he's admitted it time and time again because it ends up me giving myself more work. But it's work I love to do. Make sure you're leaving those 5-star reviews on the iTunes feed for UDPod. If you leave a 5-star review, the policies will read on the air, taken from Rod and Karen. Shout out to the Black Eye Who Tips. And when we read on the air, you know, it's a great way to get feedback, get your words heard. I'll read anything. This week, we're going to suspend me doing the reviews and the feedback. We're going to wait until outside of podcast week to cover it all. I know we've got a couple new reviews. Trust me, I appreciate them, and I will be reading them on the air. If you have more you want to say to the show, you can email the show at udpodcast@gmail.com. And let's get ready for podcast week. We're starting off the very first beginning of the week. First inaugural podcast week, I should say, with a little coverage of Georgia football. We're going to break down kind of what happened last season, the offensive, defensive, special teams, and what we think might happen this year. Our guests may be a little bit more optimistic than me, but we'll see how that turns out. We're back with podcast week, kicking off podcast week. So the way I started in this whole podcasting game, I'm using air quotes over here, my friend Chad, my roommate Chad, had started writing for a Georgia website, and I had moved to Philadelphia, and I didn't have anyone to talk about sports with. So I said, hey, would your friend who's doing the site ever really think about doing a podcast? Because by then I'd started being a fan of MTR Network, started being a fan of Rod and Karen, Sterling, Phenom, all those guys. And it was from there, Chad gave an introduction, and we launched Duju Podcast. It was the podcast wing of DujuCrazy.net. It's a Georgia website, and I was part of the podcast through 170 episodes. And then I brought the show here, became UDPod, and now we're having our first podcast week here. We did one over there. That's how it started. But I figured I couldn't go forward with podcast week, so I went backwards a little bit and tipped my cap to where I've been, because joining me today is the editor-in-chief, my ex-roommate, my good friend, Chad Floyd. What's up, man?
Man, what is going on? When you say you were part of the podcast for 170 episodes, you were more or less the podcast for that amount of time.
It'd be weird to put myself over as we start going. I'm really glad you said that, and I didn't say it. I just think it would come across poor.
Yeah, well, it's weird for me to not check your ego and actually do the opposite. But this is 2017. This is the world we're living in. Thankfully, we are actually still doing the podcast. We've just gotten back in the swing of things here leading up to the football season. So what better time to come jump on with you?
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time. But and I tell you, when people say, oh, why'd you leave? It was never a thing to leave. I felt weird telling you guys I was leaving. You guys were so intimately cool with it because we're all friends. And I'm really glad that you guys could be on today, or you could be on today. And I hope I can make an appearance on Duju Podcast so I can give my old intro, just because it's still in my bones. It's there. It's baked in. The award-winning Duju Podcast, man.
Well, the guest who's not joining us tonight, I mean, he's pretty flaky with me over there, too. So there will definitely be a time in the very near future, I'm sure.
Well, I do appreciate it, man. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about a little Georgia football. Last year,
So you and I you were more neutral on the whole Rick Smart thing than I was. You gave Smart, I think, more of a chance than I did. I saw what I saw first year. I kind of knew what I was going to see because he's a Saban guy staying in the SEC. He tries to pull a Saban, doesn't work as well as it could have. He got some weird laws passed in Georgia about information that comes from the school, which I'm still very
Governor Kirby, baby.
Still very uncomfortable with. But we went 8-5, and that's doing something that I think is very rare in college football today. It was a self-imposed rebuild. Normally you see things like a team will fall off. Like South Carolina, things just stopped working. Had to get rid of Steve Spurrier. Texas, things just stopped working. You had to get rid of Mac Brown. Georgia won 10. And and the thing about it was consistent. And it was 10 to 11 to 12 every year. And at some point, Georgia decided that it wasn't enough. They were going to self-impose a rebuild. And it's so funny, these people are like, oh, a rebuild was coming. I'm like, well, we've had rebuilds before where we did to 9, but pretty consistently we're in that double-digit space. And so the season was the season. We saw what we saw. Nick Chubb coming off an injury, rookie quarterbacks. We had a defense really, I think, kind of molded into form as the season went. The biggest question for me was always the offensive line because it looked like our backs didn't get the time and our receivers couldn't get separation with the protection they were giving.
No, sir.
And now, coming off a third-ranked recruiting class, coming off all the offseason hype, coming off what I know will be a year 2 bump in the program, I feel like it's the same team with a better defense and lots more questions on the O-line.
The questions on the O-line are going to persist until proven otherwise. I mean, it's been just a train wreck in the past 2 years.
So, and I got to ask Chad, because, again, you're more plugged into the college scene than I am. What's the take on Rick's successes in Miami? Because Miami, I mean, let's just be real. Miami went ahead and won. Would they win 9 last year?
They won 9, but I mean that's a pretty typical Miami season to start off hot, get everybody talking about is Miami back for like the 12th year in a row, and then lose to Florida State, lose 4 straight, fall off the map.
Yeah, but I mean we can say that, but also like you can admit that roster wasn't exactly talent heavy when he got there. 9 wins is an accomplishment there, and they pulled out. And I don't give a shit about this kind of stuff, but they did pull out the number 1 recruiting class.
Who, Miami?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's for next year, I think. Right
okay.
Now
Well, they've got one
they're
coming
number
in.
1 for next year because they got just like 25 commitments, and it's August.
Yeah. So I gotta ask: is any of the Georgia fan base looking south and saying, is there any second guessing at any buyer's remorse on Smart?
I mean, there's got to be to a point because, the move, even if Georgia wins a national championship sometime in the next 5 years, it was universally panned because you're firing a guy who, except for the 2013 exploding ACL year, won at least 10 games every year this damn decade.
That was a really bad year.
That was not a great year.
It was the darkest timeline.
God. And it was only like 2 weeks too, man.
That was the apocalypse. And that's one of the things that I think honestly
that was when the podcast started too.
Yeah, it was about when the podcast started. I'm not blaming us, but I'm not absolving us either. And it's crazy because you're right. It felt like, wow, we started recording about him and then the apocalypse happens and you get a coach who wears that season and he never hid from it. But it's one of those things that used that anti-Rick movement used to kind of leverage him out.
Yeah, I will say just from kind of a slight insider standpoint, I did get to go cover the ACC kickoff here in Charlotte a couple weeks ago.
Very nice.
Rick, towards the end of his time at Georgia, having had some interactions with him, he just kind of seemed aloof, a little bit, just out of it, as if he was on pain pills or something. He said right after he was hired at Miami that he was going to call plays, and it had rejuvenated him. That man was so lively at ACC kickoff. I mean, he was really 2 different people. So I don't know if it could have been a mutual thing where after 15 years, he needed a change of scenery or a change of pace to where, he's back calling the games.
Yeah.
But
I think
he
you're right.
definitely did not seem bored. So
I think a lot of that Georgia fan base probably weighed on him too because, as you and I have discussed, we're one of those fan bases that doesn't quite know who they are.
Yeah.
they assume they're in Alabama, but really they're just plain not. And it's and I think that's something that's kind of spread across the SEC is, wait, we're doing great, but we're not doing as great as Bama. And when the measuring stick for the country is in your backyard, everyone starts getting real nervous.
Well, we're a Bama that doesn't know what to do with the bodies. I mean, obviously the whole Bama Junior thing has completely destroyed the SEC from within itself.
Right.
You have Muschamp at Florida, then McElwain at Florida, then Muschamp at South Carolina, and countless others. Andrew and I actually came to the conclusion that Tennessee was going to hire Jeremy Pruitt after this year. Just keep the Sabanization of the SEC East going.
I think you're right, honestly.
Yeah, could be. But, no, basically Mark Richt fell victim to the Sabanization. And, despite being a tipped pass or, a good run defense in the second half away from winning a national championship in 2012, I mean, that's not close enough, apparently.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this team. Let's not talk about the ghosts of Christmas past. Let's talk about ghosts of Christmas future. We've got a team coming back that you and I kind of consensusly agreed that saw promise last year, but didn't really seem that much obviously we'll have the age, but the questions we had from last year remain this year. But a lot of people are deciding this to be a top 20 team. And I think, honestly, if you look, let's start with the offense. If you look at the offense, you can see how they get there. Jacob Eason's a guy who has a cannon arm, who got better as the season went on, who's got a year of experience under his belt, who's being pushed by Fromm, and who wants to make his mark on Georgia's record books. Behind him, you've got Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and then, guess what? A whole bunch of young backs like Elijah Holyfield who want to run that rock. You've got some talent on the outside, albeit a little young and unproven, but the question remains, if we can't block it, Chad, we can't run it or throw it.
Nope. Could not keep Easton clean, couldn't keep Chubb Michel keeps himself clean because he's just nasty. I think Michel is honestly the superior running back post-Chubb injury. But, I mean, it was a problem that really started in 2015, and you and I blamed Brian Schottenheimer in the way he split his offensive linemen then, but last year it kind of proved that it was a talent issue more so than anything else.
It wasn't just the stability, it was a talent thing, you're right.
Yeah, and you're looking at a situation this year where realistically you could have 2 or 3 newcomers from this recruiting class start by the end of the season. Isaiah Wynn, the senior left tackle, has still not practiced. So it goes from bad to worse pretty quick.
Yeah, and then I look at what we got from last year. I'm just going to go through some of the stats in front of me right now. There was a lot of up and down from the team. Chubb started out strong at UNC, and I think, I don't want to say as goes the O-line and the blocking goes the team, but they had a very one-sided dominant performance against UNC. I mean, that's not even a shot. That's just a fact.
No, I mean, the run game was ridiculous because UNC's defensive line is just, perpetual trash.
6.9 yards a carry. And then after that, the next 9 games, 4.1. It was a dip, I think, that coincided with Eason finding his feet. But at the same time, do you think we can avoid that kind of slump this year offensively? Because as we're going to talk about, I think the defense is there for this to be a very good football team.
Oh, I'm excited about the defense. I think the key is, they were trying to rely a little bit too heavily on the run game just to ease Eason in last year, I think. So, by the time he got the pass game going a little bit more, that coincided with the running game. Looking at, the last 3 games of the regular season, Louisiana, 235 yards, Georgia Tech, 263, TCU, 248. It just took some time to get the run game going just based off having a threat to pass because, we talk about the offensive line being bereft of talent. I don't really know where your downfield threats to take the top off the defense are in the receiving corps still.
And that's the best use of Eason's arm talent is to take, like you said, the top off the defense. Do you think Terry Godwin might be able to finally kind of put it all together? I hate using that euphemism, but I want to see the best out of him.
Yeah, for me, I thought he was kind of miscast as a freshman. He wasn't getting a chance really to make a play downfield. I think it was the Georgia Tech game that in 2015 when he was a freshman, where they finally ran like a deep crossing pattern for him, and you saw some explosiveness out of him. He's still kind of been, a hitch and screen type of guy. I'd like to see them, open up the route tree a little bit for him. He and Mecole Hardman, who...
Yeah, that's the next guy.
Yeah. They're both kind of the undersized for an outside receiver guy, but they're both just lightning quick. And if one of them, either one, can just give the receiving corps some explosiveness, I think it's going to be a lot more fun.
One of the more intriguing prospects I saw last year, Riley Ridley, he didn't catch that many balls, but he did go for 20 a catch.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the deep threat as it stands right now. Looking at the roster, they still have Chigbu listed as a starter, but he had 9 catches last year.
Right.
Ridley, I know Javon Wims was supposed to make a little bit more of an impact. He started 3 games last year, but the thing about having Ridley or Chigbu or Wims, for that matter, is, Georgia hasn't really had that receiver with size.
Right.
Since Chris Conley and Michael Bennett and everybody departed. So, for one of the smaller guys and then one of the guys to be a downfield threat, I think would make all of the difference in the world and allow the running game to have some lanes,
Yeah. I've got good feelings about this offense. Again, from the way we left last year, the question marks remain on that offensive line. They're bringing back a lot of people, but is it worth it if they're not that great?
We'll see. I mean, year 2 in a scheme. Sam Pittman is one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. I saw him firsthand take a complete crap unit at UNC into one of the best in the country. So I guess we have to have faith in Sam Pittman and what's his name, Jim Chaney, who has been he's been all over the map as an OC. But it'll be interesting to see if he opens up the playbook a little bit more, if he has some faith in that O-line.
I hear you. Well, let's go to the unit that I think you and I are most impressed with, and that's the defense.
Oh, boy.
Last year, there's some things they didn't do great, but my God, the stuff they did well was just lights out. What they were going to do, they were going to get in front of you, they were going to hit you. I don't love our DBs just because I think they're undersized. It's particularly like you look at an LSU as a very sizable corners. Bama brings those big corners out. But what I think they do have is they have the best pressure in the SEC in the front 7 that's going to make this DB group look just absolutely lights out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a DB is only as good. A defensive backfield is only as good as the line in front of them. And let's not take away any credit from the defensive backs. I agree they're an undersized group. But, man, they make plays. I mean, I don't think anybody gets their hands on the ball more than DeAndre Baker, Aaron Davis, and especially Sanders, man. He's Sanders everywhere.
Coming, man. I love watching Sanders.
He's freaking everywhere. But, with guys like Ledbetter, you still got Trent Thompson, and then what was the freshman's name? Was it Rochester? Rochester, the big defensive end. I mean, up front, you've got guys who are stout, and we haven't even mentioned the best part of that defensive unit yet.
You're right, and you're right. Not just stout. If you look at the top 9 returning linemen, everyone's 6'3", 5 over 305 pounds. All your linebackers are 6'3", 230. Like, this is going to be a group that's going to be fun to watch wreak havoc on opposing offensive lines.
And almost to a man, they're all like top 20 at their position in the country as recruits. I know we don't like to go into recruiting too much, but I'm just sitting here with an open Phil Steele, Jonathan Ledbetter, number 16, Trenton Thompson, number 1. This writing is way too small. I need glasses soon. Julian Rochester, number 8. I got number 16 and number 26 and number 16 again. I mean, it's crazy.
It's nuts, and I think it's amazing to see how quickly they've brought so much talent in. But let's not forget talent that was there when they got there. Trenton Thompson could be the best defensive tackle in the country.
He could be. Ed Oliver at Houston has something to say about that.
I mean, hey,
after I watched him just destroy Lamar Jackson. But if Trent takes that next step, then all of a sudden you're collapsing the pocket. You're not rushing as many linebackers, and that back eight is just going to feast.
He's coming into the season on the Nagurski watch list and the Outland Trophy watch list. Last year he had 64 tackles, 9.5 for loss, 5 sacks,
That's
and he had
ridiculous
off-season shoulder surgery because he was hurt while he did all this stuff.
That is a ridiculous amount of tackles for a DT.
Especially
a 3-4 DT.
Yeah, I'm about to say, the 3-4, he's supposed to eat up blocks, free up your backers. No. Trent Thompson said, no, I want to eat too. And he goes out there and he gets fed. And I tell you what, this is the unit that I'm most excited for, if only because we know what Kirby Smart can do with a talented defense. I do wish we had bigger corners. I do love you know what? I broke my own rule. I looked at some of the recruits. I love some of this DB talent that's come in. They're going to push those guys who've been there, but that's going to be iron sharpening iron, hopefully. And if this defense can hold the water for the game or two it might take for the offense to figure out who they are. Lorenzo Carter and Tyler Clark and Julian Rochester, they got that, man.
Oh, man, we haven't even mentioned Lorenzo Carter or Davin Bellamy. Both of whom probably could have gone and been second or third round.
I'm so glad Lorenzo Carter stayed.
I don't know why.
I'm always saying get your money, but Lorenzo Carter is helping Georgia football by staying.
I mean, when it broke that Chubb, Michelle, Carter, Bellamy, Sanders, all those guys were staying, all of a sudden it goes from, okay, year 2 of the rebuild is going to be a nice, pedestrian 8-9 to, hey, if this goes right and you don't have any random bad luck, this could get really interesting.
Really interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned looking at the recruiting for the secondary. They have like a full secondary that looks physically ready to go behind these seniors. I know the big name was Richard LeCount, the safety.
Yeah.
Gets Eric Berry comparisons. But there's at least 2 corners that are 6'2". I mean, you talk about having the Drake or Patrick style corners that Alabama loves to employ. I mean, if we're doing a Bama impersonation, then Kirby's recruiting classes at least have, they're evocative of that.
100%. You're right. That size down there. And normally, like a Bama, these guys would sit. I think that some of these kids are going to get their feet wet early, and I think they could be really interesting to watch. Something I'm not interested to watch, Georgia special teams. They've been hurting us our entire lives, Chad, and I don't think they're going to not hurt us this year. Last year, punter wasn't great. Kicker wasn't great. Rodrigo Blankenship kind of steadied those waters. But, hell, things got iffy with Rodrigo in the offseason between him and the coach. We lost go ahead.
Even in the offseason, Georgia special teams gives us problems.
That's true.
It's amazing.
Lost joystick to the draft, and now I'm wondering who's returning kicks, who's kicking for us. I don't know if Blankenship's back because I think they brought in a scholarship kicker.
He's back. They also did bring in a guy from some FCS school that was apparently awesome. I want to maybe went to Wofford. But it's an open competition. But at this point, I don't blame Blankenship for, possibly seeking better waters if that's what he's into. But he came out pretty blatantly against what his dad said and said, no, I'm looking to earn my scholarship at the University of Georgia. So I'm cheering for Rex back, man.
I love that he's Rex Becks. I love that someone wearing Rex Becks is back in my life.
I like that he's a kicker wearing the number 99 or 98.
Hey, get noticed, baby. Get noticed. You got a couple more seconds. We'll take a quick whip through the schedule, see how we hope these dogs can turn out the season.
Yeah, let's whip through it and see what we come up with.
All right, so first up, we've got App State in Athens. Now, I'm not one of those like FCS teams can't do it kind of guys because we saw what they did in Michigan a couple years back. I really, really hope this isn't Nickel State from last year.
Well, they are FBS now. They're in the Sun Belt. They did take Tennessee to overtime in Rocky Top last year to open the season. And because of that, they hosted Miami later in the season. Miami kind of took notice of what they did with Tennessee. I think Georgia's got to kind of do the same. I don't really expect it to be a super competitive game, maybe in like the 45-20 range or something. But I don't think App State's going to be sneaking up on anybody again anytime soon.
I agree with you there, but the question for me is, these are young kids. It's a young team. We've established that. Next week going to South Bend, could it be a little bit, looking ahead?
No, Notre Dame went 4-8 last year.
so glad I set you up for that. I was like, nail it. He nailed it. Still got it, Chad. You're
right, man.
100% right.
You tossed it up. I'm going to spike it.
Week 2, the Dogs are headed to Notre Dame. They're projected to lose this game, by the way, which is hilarious. Chad, I don't see a way Georgia doesn't beat the doors off Notre Dame.
Advanced Stats still love Notre Dame for some reason last year. Apparently the unluckiest 4-8 team of all time, but they were still 4-8. They lose their poor soul who got drafted by the Cleveland Browns at quarterback. I don't know.
And his coach also said he shouldn't have come out, which is always a great thing for a coach to do.
Well, I mean, I've never known Brian Kelly to be anything less than self-serving.
Can't argue with that.
Gun to my head, I say Georgia wins a close one. I don't know but something about that game just rubs me the wrong way, to project a Georgia blowout.
That's fine. I've got enough Notre Dame friends who
It is Notre Dame against the SEC, so that typically doesn't go well.
For Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I got enough friends that really do like Notre Dame that I'm going to relish whatever. As long as Georgia doesn't get destroyed, I'm fine. It's a win for me because they've been talking.
Why do you have Notre Dame friends?
I'm not very discerning, and people I hang out with apparently. Hey,
speaking of we knew that.
Current company included. Next up, Samford. Is this Nicholls State?
No.
Can I just say this right now? And I keep making this joke. Nicholls State never would have happened to Mark Richt.
Mark Richt had some close ones against some less than stellar competition, but not that close.
I ran the numbers. It's never been like that.
Yeah, I remember North Texas one year hanging around for about 2.5 quarters, but that's really all I got.
But the question now becomes, because that was what, week 2 last year, week 3?
It was week 2.
I have questions about the buy-in of the players. I've heard rumblings that some players are gung-ho, Coach Smart's way, the highway. Some players are asking questions after winning 8 games.
We'll see. I mean, you go from Rick, who is a super nice guy, probably you would consider him a player's coach, to Kirby, who is, son of a dictator.
Huh. Well, next up is Mississippi State, and I wanted to stop here before. Are you picking Georgia over Mississippi State?
Maybe.
Really?
That's one of those games where I could see the Mississippi State quarterback Fitzgerald going for like 175 on the ground. I think that's going to be a real tricky game.
And that's the thing. It's always been, and I always make this joke, staple of Nick Saban defenses is they cannot stop running quarterbacks. And for all its bells and whistles, we're running a Nick Saban defense. And you're right. That just made me really nervous.
You know what? If we're walking through this schedule and picking win or loss, I'm just going to pop an L there because it's got to happen at some point.
Well, And okay, so let's say they get out of that first month 3-1 or heaven forbid 2-2. It doesn't get easier going to Rocky Top.
No, and Hall and I debated this ad nauseum for really the past 2 weeks. I think Tennessee is going to be pretty damn good this year.
So do I.
I know the Neyland Stadium turf monster is ready to go grab a couple of Georgia offensive players anyway. So that's a tough one. I think if, in this hypothetical where they lose to Mississippi State, though, they come out with their hair on fire and pummel Tennessee.
Come out locked in. Maybe we can see that. I don't know. That's the one on the schedule that makes me the most nervous.
Let's put it this way: we're splitting Mississippi State and Tennessee.
that stretch will be 1-1. Fair enough.
Yes.
Last year we took one on the nose against Vanderbilt. Headed to Nashville this year. I think Georgia should be fine, but after losing Vanderbilt last year, I don't know what to think.
That one to me is the biggest test of the O-line. Like Vanderbilt's defense is pretty decent. Their offense, like last year, shouldn't be good for more than 17 points. But if the Georgia offense can't put up 20, then that's a problem. I think they'd probably be fine though.
Man, I really do hope so. Just because those nerds, and I know where I went to school, but let me have this. I know where you went to school too. We'll talk about that before I get out of here too.
Okay.
Mizzou. who came in like gangbusters to the SEC and have kind of really faded because I think that their once ripe recruiting territory, it's now opened up to everyone else, and that's become a problem for them.
Well, the problem is they don't play in their recruiting territory anymore. They were Texas recruiters through and through. Mizzou's interesting to me because they were so bad on offense those last couple of years under Pinkel, and still awesome on defense. And then last year with a defensive coordinator moving up to head coach, the script just completely flipped on them.
Yeah.
I don't think their offense is really capable of doing much against Georgia, though, and I don't really think, I think there's going to be a lot of ugly, like 17-13 type games this year. Put it that way. But I'll chalk that up as a dub.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the season too. As I look around the SEC, the league, it's like you said, it's kind of consumed itself with trying to be Saban, and we get to a Saban disciple in Florida, in the game I hate the most every year.
Don't want to talk about it. Next.
We're gonna lose to Florida again, aren't we?
Yeah, we're gonna lose to Florida again.
Okay.
But hey, I mean, we're still looking at what, 5-2 at that point?
I think so. Yeah.
We're still like 18th in the country.
Okay, so I got a bone to pick. So I proposed and planned my wedding and got a wedding date and everything before the season came out, because every year after Florida game, there's a bye week.
Nah, man, you messed up. The bye week is always before the Florida game.
I mean, excuse me, it's not the bye week. It's always a cupcake game. It's a nobody. So that's why the wedding was the 4th of November. But no, they've put the South Carolina game here now, thus negating the old Saban joke about when we played Georgia first, it always helps because they're down a few players for suspension, which, while funny and true, was always mean.
I wanted to posit a theory on that. That was a Spurrier joke, by the way.
I said Spurrier.
You said Saban. It's all good.
I did not.
So I think, every team gets one or two scheduling requests per the conference every year for how their conference schedule is going to break down. So, like, for example, you might want a bye week before Bama or a bye week after Bama, something like that. I think with Spurrier having said that, his request was to play Georgia as early as possible every year.
You think that's why that happened?
I think it might have been a little bit of insight into the way he ran the ship there.
I mean, look, you're not wrong. It worked every year, and he was right. Someone was always suspended.
Yep.
So we'll see
who that's going to be this year.
God.
Yeah.
I hope no one's suspended by this point. It's damn November 4th. And I'll tell you this, that's not an easy stretch either. Going Florida and back and then come back home for South Carolina.
We should pay South Carolina's asses.
All right, we'll see. Because we're headed to Auburn next. What do you think? Give me your assessment of Auburn, because I am illogical about Auburn.
It all depends on Jarrett Stidham to me, and they've had success with quarterbacks who have transferred in the recent past. So I'm just assuming it's going to work out swimmingly, and Auburn's going to be like a top 5 team, and we're all going to hate life. And maybe Trump's nuclear war actually does come to fruition and stops another Auburn run to the title. Oh, God, there's nothing funny about that.
That's terrible.
It's not great. But for some reason, Georgia owns Auburn. Georgia's been better against Auburn than Alabama has the past 10 years. Give me that W, baby.
I love your confidence. I need to share it. I need to get there mentally so I can just, deep breaths and finish out the season strong. Home versus Kentucky.
We stopped. I mean, we held them to 7 points last year after they had the most explosive offense in the country the month prior.
Which is why I'm irrationally afraid of, anything can happen in those stupid fucking games. I hate the Auburn game. Florida's the game I dread because I know what's going to happen. Auburn's the one I'm like, no one talks to me for 3 days before or after the game.
Yeah, I mean, Florida's always, I could go play a round of golf and predict almost down to a science that, and Georgia scored somewhere between 9 and 12 points, probably totaled about 225 yards or so, and Florida just kind of sat on them for 3 hours. I could do something productive with my life for that.
It's true. I choose to drink whiskey and curse at the television, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, Auburn, you generally get a win, but it's always going to be interesting how that win comes about. So, yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I was always a little bit more cautious in not picking Auburn games.
Yeah, it's nuts. Kentucky, I love you, Kentucky, and you keep trying, but it's not happening.
Yeah, man, look, got to win that one. I don't really want to talk about the last one either.
Look, Chad, I need you to tighten up. Fuck those nerds.
Fuck them.
Georgia Tech will lose to Georgia. It's not a rivalry. I used to write this annually at Dude You Crazy. It's not a rivalry because a rivalry requires both teams to be on equal footing and see each other as rivals. If you say to a Georgia fan, who are your rivals? They will say Florida, Tennessee, and Auburn before they say Tech. If you say, who are your Florida Tech fans, will start singing to hell with Georgia. Like, it's the craziest shit in the world. They're obsessed with Georgia, and this is the last time you're going to hear us talk about Georgia Tech until the Georgia Tech game because they don't matter to me.
So I lived in Atlanta for 5 years. You live in Atlanta now and for most of your life, minus that couple of years, little blip in the radar. If you happen to, I don't know, your iPod's out, your CD player's not working, you happen to turn on sports radio in Atlanta, first of all, God bless you. But secondly, how often do they mention the school that's in Atlanta?
The trade school in North Ave? I don't know why they would. And it's so funny because you meet a fan of that school and you say, oh, cool. I didn't know they had that many fans. Oh, they'll say, oh, my dad went there, or oh, my mom went there, or I go there, or my girlfriend goes there. It's never someone who's not I'm a casual.
It's not a girlfriend that goes there. It's not a girlfriend that goes there.
Never that. Sorry, you're right. But that's a really good point. But I'm a casual Georgia fan. I have no affiliation with Georgia. I've never had season tickets. I was never a student there. I'm just a Georgia fan. Chad, you became a Georgia fan after you attended grad. Were you a Georgia fan before grad school?
They were always kind of like, the team I would watch with some rooting interest while I was in college. Maybe it was the only other school I applied to coming out of high school.
Huh?
So
I didn't know that about you. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Georgia's the game in town. The other school is the other school, and it's a little brother thing, and it's adorable. And I know I have Tech player friends, former Tech player friends who might hear this. Love you guys, but you know what it is. Don't lie. It is what it is. So I think this is a potentially 9-win team with chance for 10 in a bowl. Is that fair?
That's perfectly fair. And Rich wouldn't have lost to Georgia Tech last year either.
No, we don't say that though. We don't say that. I've never said that to anyone. I've never pointed that out. And I think it'd be unfair to do so now to remind everyone that there's no way Mark Richt would have lost to Georgia Tech. Before we get out of here and before I get stomped to death by angry Georgia fans, Chad, I got to know. Tell everyone where they can find you, man.
I am doing most of my writing these days over at Tar Heel blog on the SB Nation community. Showed up on a couple podcasts, the Weekly Tar Heel for that. Andrew and I are still plugging along on the Dude You podcast. Just go to iTunes and type in DUDEY and it will come up in the top 30 of amateur sports on iTunes right now still somehow. You'll find Daniel Palmer on that same podcast sometime here in the very near future, I hope.
Very, very, very near future. Thanks, Chad. Follow him on Twitter at Chad_Floyd. That is the end of our first edition of Podcast Week. Stick around for the credits and the outro. But first, a little word from someone else on the MTR Network.
Hi guys, the Doctor here to tell you about a show we've got going on Premium, the Doctor Who Retrospective, where we wax poetic about our favorite parts of the Doctor Who universe, the best doctors, the best companions, the companions we could have done without, the challenges with the showrunners, and some of our favorite spin-offs, including Class and Torchwood. So, if you are a Whovian and want to join us in talking about everything that goes on in and outside of the TARDIS, subscribe to MTR Premium.
And that is the end of the first day of Podcast Week. We had a ton of fun talking with Chad Floyd of DudeYouCrazy.net about the fortunes of Georgia football as we look ahead to the season. We now take a larger look at college football tomorrow as we're joined by Connor Tapp of 24/7 Sports and Michael Felder of Bleacher Report as we talk about the Power 5 conferences. We get to bag on Georgia some more and talk about how this college football season might just turn out. We hope to see you guys tomorrow. That was your show. This is your outro. We'll see you then.